Okay, everything's about set. Hey, welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. How you doing? Please be mindful. The only simple thing the church always asks us, please do not smoke on the church property, so be mindful of that. They give us the keys to a $10 million facility. Just ask us to be a little respectful of that. So be mindful of that. The food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. That's really important. So if you ever get here late and there's no food, but there's usually always extra food. It's always nice to get here early and stay a little late. Tara's going to come up and share. This is our annual Women's Month. We literally, five weeks in September, but we kicked it off with one at the end of August. So we had 6 women powerful. Each one in their own right is a pretty amazing speaker. You'll see by tonight. Anyway, Tara's going to come up here and share this, relax, and have a good time. Thanks, man.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Tara and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, PA. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town who would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Hi.
My name is Matt. I'm an alcoholic.
My name is Tom, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tom. Hi.
Hi, I'm Patty. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Patty.
Hi, I'm Nava. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nava.
Jess, alcoholic from York.
Hi, Jess.
Luann, alcoholic from York.
Hi, Luann.
Maria, alcoholic from York.
Hi, Maria.
Alcoholic from York.
Hi, Em. Welcome. Anybody who doesn't want to introduce themselves but will anyway. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps who is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Take a look around the room, please, if you leave your hands up. These are the people who have a working knowledge of the 12 steps and they're willing and able to sponsor. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Okay. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. Now I have asked Tyler to come up and read the AA preamble.
Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Brian is going to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. And these are the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And now Tara's going to come up here and introduce our speaker for tonight.
I'd like to thank Brian for moving that mic. Now I can see the room. I have the 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like someone else to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones, and please limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening. Her name is Patty B. She's a very good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. She's come all the way from the White Rose Group in York, PA, and she's come to share her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please welcome Patty.
Hi, my name is Patty Burke and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 10, 2002. I have a sponsor. His name is Steve Farnsworth. He knows he is my sponsor. I have the honor and privilege of sponsoring other men and women in this program, and for that I'm forever grateful. Absolutely, without a doubt, it has saved my life. Because it's really hard to think about yourself when you're helping somebody else. So that absolutely has saved me a lot of time. My home group is White Rose. We meet 8 o'clock on Friday night. I have a position in that home group. I am the speaker getter. I've been the speaker getter for the last 14 years. Spirit of rotation we got going on in my group. Absolutely, I've tried to pass off this position to somebody else, and it keeps coming back to me. So I do travel and I go out and I get speakers and I find speakers, so there's always a message of hope at my home group. So if you haven't been to York, Pennsylvania at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, I suggest you come down. There's like 180 recovery houses in York, Pennsylvania. So there's tons of young people and there's tons of babies. And so we have babysitter meetings 6 nights out of the week in York, Pennsylvania. So it's a great place for young people to get sober who have kids. And all the kids grow up in AA, and it's amazing. I've had custody of I used to have custody of my granddaughters. I had them for 5 years. And I don't have custody of them anymore. Their mother is sober. She has 4 years sober. I'll tell you about that later. But my granddaughters were raised in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and every Friday night I get them because they believe they belong to White Rose Home Group, and they show up every Friday night with me at White Rose. And they just think it's their home group, and it is their home group, you know, and they've grown up with a bunch of little AA babies. And we were leaving the home group last night, and they were with their friends out in the little corridor outside, and they have this little handshake they got going on. And it's so adorable. And I tell you, as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous, not only has my life changed, but my daughters and my granddaughters have a life today as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I want to tell you what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. It's given me a brand new life, not a patched up old life. And I don't think I'll ever be able to pay Alcoholics Anonymous back for what it's done. Because not only does alcoholism affect the whole family, but so does AA affect the whole family. Because I have a daughter who is 4 years sober. I have a sister who is 9 years sober. I have 2 ex-husbands, thank God. One has 11 years sober, and the other one's probably going on about 2 years sober. You know, so Alcoholics Anonymous absolutely has affected my whole entire family, you know. And so I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I had a father who was a drunk, and he was amazing. He was absolutely fabulous. He was drunk around the clock. I loved him. He was funny. He was sarcastic. He was amazing. You know, I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and they do not have the same feeling about my father as I do. They were like, he is not a nice guy, and I thought he was fabulous. I loved him. I was so attracted to what was going on in his world. You know, my mother did not drink. She took care of the house, the kids, him. Not attracted to what was going on in her world. I wanted nothing to do with what was going on with her. I would watch my father drink. I would watch my father change and come alive, and I couldn't wait to get to the places he went to. And of course, he would take me to some of those places as a young kid. He would take me to the bars with him, and it'd be dark and it'd be dirty, and the jukebox would be playing, and I loved it, you know. And and it was just, I felt so safe and secure when I was with my dad. You know, he's the first person I've ever felt spiritually connected to my whole entire life until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's probably because he suffered from the same spiritual illness that I did. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought my dad was cool, and I loved him, and you know, and I was his favorite, you know, and we'd roll around, and he'd drink all night long. And I would get up in the middle of the night, and I'd get him a beer, and I'd pop it open and drink as much as I possibly could until I got into the living room. And I don't remember the effects produced by alcohol at that young age. I just know I did it a lot. And he would, you know, when it'd start getting light, he'd switch to coffee, and he'd start drinking coffee, and he would go to work. And so he took care of us. He provided very well, and my mother took care of the other stuff. And I was raised in a pretty decent home, except if you would ask me when I first got here, I was like, there was never enough, you know, and there was always enough. I may not have had everything I wanted, but I had absolutely everything I needed, you know. And my father taught me how to drink, you know. And so at the age of 14, like seriously, I really wish I would have started drinking in kindergarten, because in kindergarten I really needed a drink bad, you know. And I look at my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, and I'm like, God, does she need a drink, you know? And I really did need a drink, you know. I was irritable, restless, and discontent at that young age, and I was filled with fear, and I definitely needed a solution way back then. And I didn't start drinking until I was 14 years old. And my best friend, she went to her cousin's one weekend, and when we met Monday morning at the bus stop, she said, I drank this weekend. And she said, and we cannot wait for the weekend. We got to go now. And I was like, all right. And so we cut school, and we jumped on a bus, and we went to Jersey City. And what happened that day, it was absolutely magical. What happened that day is I experienced my very first spiritual awakening. We started to drink. I became comfortable in my own skin. I could look you in the eyes. I could care less what you thought about me, because I always thought people were thinking about me. I became extremely seductive. My clothes came off, and I went into a blackout. And that's how I drank from the very beginning to the very end, except towards the end. I wasn't so seductive, but I was definitely, without a doubt, naked. And let me tell you something. I found something that day that was so powerful and so freeing that I was never, ever going to wait for anybody ever to offer me alcohol ever again. And I couldn't even believe how much my head was like attacking me until I started drinking, you know. And it was so quiet, and of course, you know, I'd overshoot that mark, but I tell you, I found something so amazing. I lived up the street from this liquor store, and I would go every single solitary day with my lunch money and get old men to buy me alcohol. So I was a daily drinker from the very beginning, and I had to, because my head was so loud, and I was so irritable, restless, and discontent unless I drank, and I did it every single day. And when you're 14 years old and you're naked in a blackout, you get in a lot of trouble, and I did not care. It was well worth it for me to be okay. And, you know, and I got in a lot of trouble. You know, when I was 14 years old, I stood out in front of that liquor store. It was Memorial Day weekend. I got some old guys to buy me alcohol. And I went to the beach, and I was roaming around the beach, and I was probably a little seductive at this point, right? And I ran into 2 guys, and they asked me if I wanted to go drinking with them, and I was like, absolutely. When you're drinking with lunch money, I'm willing to do anything, you know? And so what happened that day is I jumped in a car with two guys who had no idea who they were, nor did I care. All I knew was I was going to be drinking a lot that day. And what happened that day absolutely changed my world. And what happened is I wound up getting brutally beaten and raped. Does not make me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is I have an allergic reaction to alcohol. Once I put any alcohol in my system, it sets off a phenomenal craving, and once I start, I can't stop. And when I do stop, all I do is think about it until I pick it up again. But this day I became a victim, right? And I used this until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a really long time ago, obviously. And I convinced my mother. My mother was like devastated. My mother was a great mom. All she wanted to do was to make sure we were okay, and she wanted to take care of us. And she didn't really know how to deal with this. This was a long time ago. This was 39 years ago. And she didn't know how to deal with this. And so I convinced her that if you were raped at the age of 14, that you would probably need to drink, and she just didn't know what to do, and she just allowed me to drink because she wanted me to be okay. And so at a young age, I was allowed to drink. I wasn't allowed to drink the way I wanted to drink, but I was allowed to drink enough to take the edge off, and I really believed I didn't have any suicide attempts throughout high school because I was allowed to drink, and I was allowed to take that edge off, and I would sneak out of the house, and I would, get into these blackouts and cause all kinds of commotion and stuff, and they started sending me to psychiatrists, and I went to hundreds of them and counselors and all kinds of people. And they said that was for every depression. They started putting me on medication, and they would say stuff to me like, now, Patty, if you drink on this medication, it's going to triple the effect of alcohol. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Yes, definitely taking the meds. You know what I mean? Drinking on lunch money, definitely need meds. You know what I mean? And I'm a mess. And I barely made that out of high school. Made it out of high school with a note from one of my many psychiatrists saying if I didn't graduate my class, I'd have a breakdown. And they just wanted me out of that school. I can guarantee you that. They just wanted me out, And so I graduated high school at the age of 18 with 0 credits. And I walked across that stage. I was the very last person to graduate in that class. There was 463 people, and I was the 460th person to graduate that class. And I walked across that stage, and I fell off the stage, and I was drunk, and my mother was pissed. And I got home, and my father was like, I know my mother put him up to this. Because he would never do this, but she put him up to it. And he said, you know what, Patty, we've done our part. You graduated high school, you're 18 years old, it's time for you to go. And so I left home at the age of 18, and I moved in with a go-go dancer, and I was supposed to watch her son while she danced at night. And what happened is my life became very unmanageable. I didn't have my mother to manage my life, and I started feeling like I didn't have a reason and purpose for living anymore except to drink. And I felt like I really needed to do something because now I started getting arrested in DUIs. And so what I thought I really needed was, what I really always wanted to do my whole life is just be a mom. And so what I thought I really needed was a baby. If I have a baby, I'll have someone to always love, someone that will love me. I'll have a reason and purpose for living, and that's what I did. I set out to get pregnant. And I showed up to this party, and I seen this really dumb guy across, I don't want to tell you how dumb he is. I seen him across the room. And I said to somebody, I said, what is his name? And they're like, his name is Kevin. And I said to him, Kevin, get in the car now. And he just got in the car. That's how dumb he is, And so I got pregnant, right? And my mother was like devastated. I was raised Catholic. And she thought it was best if I marry this guy. And this is how my dad describes me. My dad said that if I was in Shea Stadium, and the stadium is filled with brain surgeons, that I pick up the hot dog vendor. And that's exactly what this guy was a hot dog vendor. And so one of my many, many psychiatrists, one of them just happened to be a reverend, so my psychiatrist married me. So this is where we're going, right? And so I married this hot dog vendor, right? And I have this little girl that I love with all my heart and soul, and all I want to do is to be the best mom. And really, she never has a mom because I'm never there, And I leave him, of course I'm not going to stay with him. I've been married twice and never ever changed my last name because I never ever wanted to be married, and I didn't like the husbands I had. So I wasn't changing my name or staying married to them. And so the first chance I got at, I left him, and I had this little girl that I had to take care of. And what would happen throughout my life is every time my life would become really unmanageable and I would start getting arrested, I think what I would need is one more baby. If I have one more baby, I'm going to be okay. See, I don't know what I have is something that no human power is going to solve my problem. I just think if I have enough kids, I'll be okay. And so in the first 2 pregnancies, I did not drink. So by the time I'm pregnant with my 3rd daughter, I cannot stop drinking, so I definitely know this is a progressive illness, right? And every day I wake up and I try so hard not to drink because I do not want to hurt this baby inside of me, because I tell you, I love my kids, And I figured, well, let me just take a drink to take the edge off. And what would happen is I would take a drink and I would need the second one more than I needed the first. And then I would need the third more than I needed the second. And pretty soon I'd be in a blackout, you know, and I would be terrified what I was doing to this baby inside of me. And I tried so hard every day not to drink, you know, and every day I would just wind up drunk in a blackout. And so I would have a priest bless the baby inside me. And I had holy water blessed by the Pope that I put on my stomach every single day. And I would have prayer services going on all over the country, and I could do all those things, but I couldn't stop drinking. And so the day she came, I was terrified to have this little girl because I didn't know what I did to this little girl. And my best friend came with me, and when the doctors went to hand me the baby, I wouldn't take her because I was scared because I didn't know what I did to that little girl. And then when they handed my best friend that baby and she smiled, I knew that baby was okay. And I gotta tell you, I knew I was powerless over alcohol. I knew it. I tried so hard not to drink. I would try so hard just to take a drink, just to take the edge off, you know? And every day I would wind up drunk, you know? So I knew I was powerless over alcohol. I knew for a long time that I was powerless over alcohol. I knew from the first time I drank that I drank different than all my friends. I immediately was hiding it. I immediately was up at the liquor store getting all men to buy me alcohol, you know? And I knew my life was unmanageable. And my life has been unmanageable since kindergarten, like I told you. And it's not all the DUIs and all the accidents and all the states and the husbands and all the... I don't think the unmanageability has anything to do with that. I think it has everything to do with what goes on the inside. I think it has everything to do with what they talk about on page 52 of the big book, of the bedevilments. My personal relationships were a mess. I was buried in misery and depression. I couldn't seem to make a living. I was filled with fear. All that stuff was going on with me for years and years, not that I could ever put words to it. And if I could put words to it, I wouldn't tell anybody about it because I would be afraid of what they would think of me, you know? So I knew that I was powerless. I knew my life was unmanageable, but I tell you, it took me a lot of years to concede to my innermost self that I was alcoholic, like it talks about on page 30 of the big book. And I wound up marrying my two youngest daughters' father. He was a chef, so he's an upgrade hot dog vendor, right? And so what he would do is he would send out his resume. They come in, they pack us up, and they move us to whatever resort he was going to work at. And I never, ever wanted to be married, you know, and so we get to this resort, you know what I mean, and what I would do is I would, sleep with the whole kitchen staff. I'm only kidding. I definitely didn't sleep with the old guys. And he'd be a little horrified, and he'd send out his resume, and he'd leave with the kids, and I'd stay behind and play until I started missing my kids, and I'd follow behind, and that's how I lived for a really long time. And I just told you what kind of wife I was, but he was very abusive, and I knew if I pushed him hard enough, he would either beat me up, or he'd lock me in a room and scream at me for 3 hours and tell me what a piece of crap I was, and then he'd feel really bad for at least a week. And I could drink the way I wanted to drink for a week, and I was willing to take a beating to drink the way I wanted to drink. By no means do I think I'm a victim. I suited up and showed up for everything in my world. And also what I would do also is, if he would threaten to take away my vodka, I had these vases with fake flowers in them, and I would fill them up with vodka and hide them all over the house. And I would fill coffee cups up, and I had them behind picture frames, so just in case he would ever take away my vodka, I would always have a backup, you know, because God forbid if you take away my solution, we're going to have a problem, you know. And I was so dependent on alcohol, you know. And so towards the end of my drinking, we're living in Georgia, and we have this restaurant, and I'm a mess. I'm a complete mess, you know, and I'm drinking around the clock, and because what I did is I tried to be a better mother to my two youngest daughters. I would show up at their school, and I would carve pumpkins and do gingerbread houses and go on class trips with them. And they'd be drunk out of my mind, and they started calling my little girls down to the office, and they're like, "Does your mom drink?" And my little girls would say, "My mom only drinks water, coffee, and vodka." And so then the school was on to what I was up to, right? And so what happens is my husband's really tired of me. He's absolutely tired of me. And I'm having an affair once again with another young guy who works in our kitchen. He's had it with me. And he comes home from work, and he drags me from the kitchen into the bedroom, and he gets on top of me, and he strangles me till I pass out. And I come to, and he says to me, "Patty, if you're ever afraid of me tonight, be afraid of me because I'm going to kill you." And I got to tell you, I seen something different in his eyes that I'd never seen all the other times he beat me up, and I knew he meant it. And he started strangling me again till I almost passed out, and he just fell off of me, and I got away, and I called the police. And the police came, and they took him away, and they arrested him, and he has high bail. And I'm in Georgia, and I have this restaurant to run, and I'm a mess, and I start thinking what my problem really is Georgia. I think what I really need to do is get back to Jersey. If I get back to Jersey, I'm going to be okay. And so that was my plan. I was going to pack my kids up in my car, and I was going to head back to Jersey, and the phone rang, and it was the police, and he said he was bailed out of jail. And he was coming back home to pack up some of his stuff, because now I have a restraining order on him, and I figured tonight's the night, I'm leaving tonight. So I stopped and I got a 100 proof bottle of vodka, and what happened is I came to, and the police, my house was filled with police and the neighbors, and my husband was not only packing up his stuff, but he was packing up my little girl's stuff. And the police told me that my little girls were better off with him than a drunk as a mother, and he had serious charges on him. And then, you know what? That was the absolute truth, because every single day I would endanger my little girls' lives. I would run over railroad tracks and blow out the tires of my car in complete blackouts. I would hit trees. My little girls were terrified each and every single day. I remember one Saturday morning, it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got into the restaurant parking lot, and I had my youngest daughter with me. She was 4 years old at the time, and I hit a tree. And she went running into the restaurant because she was terrified to her father, and she says to him, she said, "Daddy, I'm so afraid Mommy's acting really weird." And she just fell asleep and hit a tree, and I'm so afraid. And I got into that restaurant, and he started yelling and screaming at me. And what I did is I looked my little 4-year-old right in the eyes, and I said to her, "See what you did?" Because I really believed everybody else was the problem. I didn't know it was me. And I got to tell you, my favorite speaker, he's from California, and I love him. He absolutely, he died the day my grand sponsor got buried. So 2 of my AA heroes died in 1 week. But he talks about how he comes to on a bus with his little girl, and she's crying, and she's holding her stomach, and she's shaking. And he says to her, "What's the matter, honey?" And she said, "Daddy, I'm so hungry, you forgot to feed me today." And so they get to a rest stop, and he runs in, he gets a bottle of wine, he gets a sandwich. When he gets up to the counter, he only has enough money for one, and he puts back her sandwich. And I got to tell you, and I love my kids with all my heart and soul. And I will kill you if you do anything to my kids. But if you put one drink in me, I will steal their food. And I knew he had nowhere to go with those little girls, and I left, and I took off to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I got to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I was so relieved he was gone. And I was relieved my kids were gone, because now I could drink the way I wanted to drink, and it got to the point that I couldn't go 20 minutes without a drink, because I would shake so violently. My head and my heart would attack me so bad I wouldn't know what else to do but to take a drink. And I weigh 80 pounds, and I'm bruised from head to toe from falling, and I'm bright yellow. And I have this long hair, and it's falling out, and I have bald patches all over my head, and I have nowhere to go, and I'm a mess. And I wound up back in Georgia, and I wound up moving into this crack hotel because I had nowhere to go. And now the condition I'm in, and I can't go 20 minutes without a drink. I can't even work in the public anymore. And I wound up doing things I never dreamed I would ever do, because that's not how I was raised. And every day was so hard for the things that I had to do each and every single day for a bottle of vodka. And I just didn't know how I wound up that way. And I didn't know women that drank like me, and I didn't know women that were doing the things that I was doing. And but I thought I heard somewhere that people who smoke crack are doing the things that I'm doing. So I thought to myself, I should start smoking some of this crack. I might feel a little bit better about myself. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to smoke crack. Has anybody in here smoked crack before? Well, so this is the deal. Like, when you smoke crack, you get really paranoid and you hide. And I would find you. I was way too drunk to smoke crack. I couldn't coordinate it at all. And there's pushers, and I love vodka. I loved it. Right? And so what I would do is I would find them, and they hate me. So you know, like, you're in rough shape when the crackheads hate you. You're not even smoking their shit, right? So I definitely tried to become a drug addict, way too drunk to do that, you know, and then I was stuck with the vodka, you know. But I can't handle the things that I'm doing. And across the street from this crack hotel was this car dealership, and the mayor owned it. And I had this big grand opening to the restaurant. I had the mayor cut the ribbon. I had the priest bless the place. So I went over there, and I took to the mayor. And he gave me a job detailing cars, so I didn't have to be out in the public. I could be drunk out of my mind, spraying hoses, seeing rainbows, you know what I mean? You know, and life was starting to look up for me, and I moved out of that crack hotel, and I moved into a trailer park, right? And things were going really well for me. I was moving up, right? And I came into work one day, and the mayor says to me, "Where are the keys to that van? Because we're selling that vehicle today." And I have no idea why I had the keys, but I did. And he said, "Grab something off the lot and go home and get those keys." So I grabbed a big red truck, and I went home. And I figured, well, I'm home, I might as well have a few more drinks. 6 drinks later, I'm like, I gotta get back to work. So I start rushing to get back to work, and I come to, and the truck is totaled. And there's fire engines and ambulance and police all around me. And they got me into the ambulance and they took me off to the hospital where they put 150 stitches in my face, and from there they took me off to jail. And I got to tell you, I was so relieved when I got to jail because that was my 5th DUI. And I really believed, without a doubt, the only way that I could ever stay sober is if I was locked away. Because without a doubt, the state of New Jersey absolutely sent me to AA. And I remember walking into those rooms and thinking to myself, if you drank like me, you never stop drinking. So I didn't believe AA worked. And I didn't want to stop. You know what I mean? I didn't want to stop. And why would I want to stop when that was the only thing that made me feel whole and complete? You know, that was the only thing that stopped my skin from crawling. Why would I want to stop drinking? You know, and so, but now I know, like, my life is so unmanageable, you know what I mean? I can't even go 20 minutes without a drink. I'm doing things that I never wanted to ever do in my life. I lost my kids. And so I really believe that the only way I could ever stop drinking is if I was locked away and my father's trying to bail me out, and I won't come out because I know once I get out, I'll be drinking again. And eventually my father bails me out of jail, and I'm doing the same things I was doing in that crack hotel, I'm doing in this trailer park. And my world is small, and it's dark, and it's dirty, and I'm so tired, and I'm so lonely. In the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about the loneliness that only another alcoholic knows. And I miss my kids so bad, and I cannot believe that I'm going to have to sell my soul one more day for a bottle of vodka. And I got to tell you, I have always prayed, you know. And I would, because right after I was raped, I asked my mother, I said, Mom, why would God let this happen to me? And this is what my mom told me, because this is what my mom believes. She said, Patty, God's not punishing you, God's just making you stronger. So all these years as I'm making decisions based on self, that I'm putting myself in the position to be harmed, I think I'm getting stronger to get to God. And I think God is so far out there that I would have to pray through the saints to get to God, and I would pray to St. Jude. And he's the patron saint of hopeless and despair cases, and I would pray to him every day. And what happened is the vodka stopped working. It wouldn't stop my head no matter what. No matter how much I put in, my head was still racing. It wouldn't calm it down anymore, and I just could not sell my soul one more day. And I didn't say a prayer to St. Jude, I said a prayer to God. And I said, God, you got to help me because I can't get any stronger. And I know there's a God, because God's the only one I asked for help that day. And I drank whatever vodka I had left, and I took a bottle of Tylenol PM, and I came to on June 10, 2002 in intensive care. And my father flew in, and they told my father that he was going to probably have to take me home in a body bag. And, you know, and they took all kinds of tests, and eventually it came back that I had no kidney, no liver damage. And they shipped me off to a mental hospital where they detoxed me. And when I could stop shaking long enough, they can get me on a plane and get me back to Jersey, where my sister had a rehab set up for me. And I tell you, and I got off that plane, and all the bloat was completely off of my body. You could see every single bone in my body, and I had the long hair with the bald patches, and I was yellow and bruised. And my brothers are looking at me like, oh my God, she's dying. And I swear to you, I'm thinking to myself, they are so jealous of me. I look like a model, you know. And so I get into this rehab, right? And I have 7 days in there because that's all my husband's insurance will cover. And they want me to do workbooks and worksheets. And I lost the ability to read and write. And I was so embarrassed that I couldn't possibly tell them I didn't know how to read and write anymore. And so they were going to get me funded. They take me up into the office, and they go through my workbooks and my worksheets, and nothing's completed. And they said I wasn't serious about recovery and that I needed it to go. And I just started to cry because I had nowhere to go. And I never wanted to go back to where I was. And I never wanted to give away my kids and give away my soul to drink. And I never, ever wanted to go through another detox ever again. And I was willing to do whatever they wanted me to do. And what they wanted me to do was go to York, Pennsylvania to a recovery house. And I didn't know what a recovery house was. I thought what I thought a recovery house was for women who got out of jail for murder and were probably beating me up. And I was willing to go, you know. And I get to this recovery house, and I'm scared to death. And I walk in, and there's this girl who lives there, and she's on the phone talking to somebody. She stops, she takes one look at me, she gets back on the phone. She's like, holy shit, this one's a real doozy. I think she has a wet brain. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what that is. So I'm showing up to meetings, I don't understand what anybody's talking about, you know. I feel like I've gone too far for the things that I've done. I come back home to her, and they'd be like, are you sure you have wet brain? She's like, I'm pretty sure you have wet brain. She said, not only that, everybody in AA is talking about you, and I knew they were all looking at me. She said they're all cornea skeletor, right? And so I am a mess, right? And 16 years ago, there was these people from Baltimore that were coming into York AA with the big book, and they were destroying AA. And you weren't allowed to get a big book sponsor from Baltimore. And this was the first time I was getting sober, and I was not going to be destroyed by these people, right? I was following the rules, right? So this guy, Gangster gets me a sponsor, right? Who's not from Baltimore, who's not using the big book. So I know I'm safe, right? Right? And she says, what you got to do is you got to write down every single person you've ever slept with. Can you imagine? I'm not doing any once, right? And I'm a mess, you know what I mean? And I'm like crying, and I want to drink, and I want to kill her. I want to kill everybody in the house, and I'm threatening to kill her, and I'm getting worse by the days. And I start thinking, I'm probably just a mental case, right? And like I'm in the grocery store, in the 15 item or less, they're questioning me out my items. Meltdown. Let me tell you, if I would have had a gun, I would have killed her, right? And nobody would hire me. Like, nobody would hire me. I couldn't believe, like, nobody would hire me looking like the model that I look like, right? And so finally I get this job in Denny's, right? And I'm embarrassed. I'm absolutely so embarrassed that I'm an alcoholic and that I live in a recovery house, and I'm not going to tell a single soul, right? And so I'm standing at the hostess station one Saturday morning, and in walks this guy from Jersey. And I turned to her and I said, oh my God, I slept with him and I didn't put him on the list. She's like, oh my God, you keep a list? I was like, you don't? She's like, no, I don't. Horrified, right? And so I get together with this woman with the list of all the people I slept with, right? And this is what she tells me. She told me that I've harmed nobody. The only person I've ever harmed was myself. And the reason the way I was is because I didn't bond with my mother. And you know, I'm getting worse by the days, but I figure, well, she knows what she's doing because she's not using this big book, right? And I'm getting worse by the days, and I'm like, I can't sleep. I have drunk dream after drunk dream. I'm like threatening to kill her every single day. I'm threatening to kill everybody in the house, myself. I'm screaming, I'm crying, right? And she calls me up one day and she says, you need to get yourself a new sponsor. I think I threatened her one too many days. And she said, you need to get yourself a new sponsor because you have something that different than I do. And thank God she did say that, because you know what? I did have something different than she did. She was a problem drinker. She stopped drinking and her life got better. I'm a real alcoholic. I stopped drinking and my life does not get better. My life gets worse. And I started going to some different meetings, and I started hearing things in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started hearing people talk about the hole in the soul. And that's how I felt my whole life, like I had a hole in my soul and I could never put words to it. And I would hear people talk about how they can walk into a room full of people and how lost and alone they felt. And that's how I felt my whole life. And I didn't know other people felt that way. I just thought it was me, and I thought it was nuts. And there was this one woman, and she absolutely glowed, and she talked about how she felt like the scum of the earth, and she didn't feel that way anymore, and she certainly didn't look that way. And she talked about the way she drank, and she drank the way I drank, and she didn't do that anymore, and she didn't do the things that I was doing. And so I went up and I asked her if she'd be my sponsor, and she asked me if I was willing to go to any lengths. And I said, absolutely, I went to any lengths to drink, I just told you. And this is what she told me. She said, Patty, people have been telling you your whole life, if you just stop drinking, you'll be okay. And she said, when you stop drinking, you are definitely not okay. She said, drinking has never been my problem. Drinking has always been my solution. But now that my solution stopped working, what I needed was a new solution. She said what I had was a spirituality, and what I needed was a spiritual solution. She said everything in this world was going to come and go. The only thing everlasting is God. And she said I must have a love affair with God, because there will come a day that the only thing that comes between me and a drink is God. And she said I better have a strong foundation. She said everything I think and need and want, I'm going to put on that back burner. I'm going to learn how to live this way of life. She said I was going to get up every morning, I was going to say that third step prayer, and I was going to help as many people as I could. And if I couldn't help them, I wasn't to hurt them. She also talked about the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said she was from Maryland. I swear to you, I swear to God, that if I would have known that Baltimore was in Maryland and the big book and the book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the same thing, I would not be sober today. That is a fact. I might have had a little touch of wet brain, right? And then she said, next we're going to launch on the vigorous course of action. We're going to start writing a personal inventory. And I already thought I did that, and I wasn't doing that again, because the only thing that proved to me, I was a bigger whore than I thought I was, and I wasn't doing it. But I'd get up every morning, I'd say that third step prayer, I'd go off to work, I was so helpful, they were giving me awards. I'd come back home, I was like the mother of the house, I cleaned, I cooked, I took care of the kids. I went off to a meeting, I stuck my hand out to somebody who had one day less than me. I'd come back to that house, and I'd throw myself on the kitchen floor, and I'd scream and cry because I wanted to drink. And everybody seemed like they're happy, joyous, and free, and I was not. And everybody seemed like their families were coming back and mine were not. I haven't seen my kids in a year, and I was getting pissed. And so I called her up and I said, this is not working. I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. Meanwhile, I'm not writing a 4-step, you know. And I said, you know, all I want to do, I just want to hug my girls for 5 minutes. And this is what she told me. She said, Patty, you don't have to physically hug your kids. God can hug them for you, and I want you to pray about that tonight. And that's what I did. I said a prayer to God, and I fell asleep, and I didn't have a drunk dream. I had a dream. I walked into a room, and all 3 of my daughters were there, and I could feel them hug me. And somehow, 2 days later, my middle daughter got my phone number, and she called me, and I told her about my dream, and she said, oh my God, Mom, I had the same dream. So if God can bring me and my daughters together in our dreams, God could do anything. And I tell you, that obsession was lifted. And I did a 4th and 5th step into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I couldn't believe I was the problem. I thought it was the husbands. You know, I thought it was with them. But I found out who the problem was, and it was me. And when I got done writing, I could see exactly who and what I was. And I couldn't blame anybody anymore. And when I got together with her to do that 5th step, she could see on my face that I knew I was the problem. She didn't have to point any of that stuff out to me because I already knew, and I felt like crap. And this is what she told me. She said, Patty, the things you did when you were out there doesn't make you who you are. They're just things that you did. And she said, I probably needed to do what I did when I was out there, so when I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I never had to go back out. And all those dirty, disgusting things I thought I did when I was out there were going to be my biggest gifts to help other women. You know, and she's absolutely right. I do not regret my past, you know. And she sent me home to do 6 and 7 for the first time since I was 14 years old. My head was silent, you know. And I know it wasn't for that long, but it was silent just like that first time I drank. You know, and I reviewed those first 5 proposals, making sure I left nothing out. I said that 7-step prayer. I gave it to God, good, bad, right or wrong. I don't know what's right or wrong or good or bad. I just give it all to God. And I don't work on any of my character defects. I give them all to God. He's going to remove what he sees fit. Whatever is in my way of being useful to my brothers and my sisters and him. You know, and then I started writing my 8-step list, and this time the state of Georgia's looking for me. They want me back in Georgia for my 5th DUI in total in that truck. And so it looks like I'm going to go to jail for a couple of years. And so my sponsor said, we really got to get you through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we got to get you through as many amends as we can, so when you go to jail, you'll be spiritually fit to carry this message. And she said, we'll start with the closest state, we'll send you back to Jersey, you know. And so my first amends was going to be with my dad, and I tell you, and I love my dad with all my heart and soul, and I call him up, and I'm talking to my dad every week, you know, and he says to me, he says, you know what, Patty? I really believe for the first time in your life you're going to be okay with this alcohol thing. And he said, you know, and I got to tell you, I'm real tired. I feel like I live a life of a houseplant. I'm like, Dad, don't say that. I'm coming back to Jersey. We're going to go hang out. We're going to do some stuff together. Because my mother died when I was 25 years old from colon cancer. My dad has been so sad and holding on, you know, and I really felt like, you know, he was just like so relieved that finally I was getting better, you know. And so I get to Jersey, and my first amends is going to be with my dad. He doesn't answer the phone. And finally I get in touch with my brothers, and they said that my father had a stroke that morning. He was in critical condition. He was paralyzed, and he couldn't even talk. So I called my sponsor. I said, it looks like I can't make that amends. And she said, oh, yes, you can. She said, you ask everybody to leave that room. You don't tell them you're sorry. You've been sorry your whole life. You tell them you're wrong. And that's what I did. And my dad started to cry. And I said, you know what, Dad? There's a good chance I'll never be that person ever again if I continue doing the things that I'm doing. And my dad did manage to say the words, I love you, and he died a week later. And I really believe that my dad held on long enough for me to get sober so we can go back home to be with my mom. You know, and I got to make amends with those hot dog vendors. And my second husband said to me, he said, you know what, Patty, I really was going to kill you that night. The only reason I didn't kill you that night is because a bright white light came and hit me in the head and knocked me off of you. And the whole time I've always thought God was so far out there, and I've always been in the palm of God's hands. You know, and I went in front of this judge. I went back to Georgia, and I went in front of this judge whose daughter was killed a year earlier by a drunk driver. And the mayor's mother was killed 10 years earlier by a drunk driver, so it didn't look good. And my grand sponsor, who I love with all my heart and soul, who died 4 years ago, his name was Tom Flynn, and he laid down his life for me, and he taught me how to read and write. And I worked for him for 6 years, and every weekend we go out and we do AA, and I really believe I have a strong foundation as a result of him, you know. And he said to me, he said, you know what, Patty? He said, the lawyers, the judge, the prosecutors, none of those people are in charge. God's in charge, and if you're supposed to go to jail, that's where you'll go. And I went in front of this judge, and what she gave me is 24 hours in jail. And I guess God thought it was fit for me to carry this message outside the jail, not inside the jail. You know, and I had this little suit on that my sponsor bought me, and they handcuffed me, took me out of the courtroom, handcuffed me, and threw me into a holding cell with another prisoner. And the prisoner thought I was a lawyer. I was like, nope, go to jail. Right? And I went to jail for that 24 hours. I was back in York, Pennsylvania. I stood the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And let me tell you, that I was sober in York, Pennsylvania, people are going to get sober. I'm going to make sure of it, right? And I was like trying to take everybody, when I was working at Denny's, nobody was alcoholic in there but me. I'm trying to take everybody through the steps. Everybody needs a spiritual awakening because they're not acting right? I'm trying to, like people ship me people, you know, I'm like ripping people up off the streets. People are getting sober. I got this apartment, right? And it had high ceilings, and I got some lumber, and I was going to build a loft, and I was going to start stacking the drums because people in New York are getting sober now, right? And what happened is nobody got sober except for me. They stole everything I owned, and I barely owned anything. And then they started stealing my checks, and then they started stealing my mail, so I didn't know I was bouncing checks, right? I tell you, I had so much fun. I really did. It was my favorite time of my sobriety. I made so many mistakes. It was so amazing and so awesome and so fun. And you really learn how to effectively sponsor people by making so many mistakes. And I remember my first two sponsees, they were from Jersey, right? And I remember saying to my grand sponsor, I'm like, and they went back out. I'm like, I literally went to the crack house and like dragged them out of there crying. I'm like, come out here, I'm gonna kill these crack dealers, you know. And so I said to my grand sponsor, I said, I can't do this. He said, these people are not listening to me. And he said, Patty, they're not supposed to listen to you. And I'm thinking to myself, he's so old, he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? He's like, you're not supposed to tell them what to do, you're supposed to show them what you do. He said, what you are is the paper boy, the paper girl. What you're supposed to do is deliver the message. What they do, it is between them and God. I'm thinking, whatever, you're old, right? And so he said, you should really pray about that, right? And so I prayed about that morning, one morning before I went off to work, and I came outside, and there was a paper bag on my porch. I was like, oh my God. And so I said to my friend, Barb Miller, I said, Barb, because I was living with Barb Miller at the time, I said, Barb, I found a paper bag on the porch. She's like, yeah, he leaves it there all the time. But I swear to you, I've never seen it before that, and I've never seen it after it. So I really knew it was a message for God, right? And so what happens is I'm running around, I'm sponsoring people, you know, my kids are coming back into my life. I get into my very first relationship. And I am like madly in love, right? And he's in AA, and I'm in AA, you know, and I'm running around sponsoring people. And I'm so happy that I'm finally like in love, because when I tell you I could care less about those husbands, like I was not capable of being a wife. I was not capable of being in a relationship. I wasn't even capable of being a mother, you know. And the 12 steps and the people in New York, Pennsylvania, my sponsors who laid down my life has taught me all of that. And so I'm running around, and what happens is my relationship starts failing because I start dying spiritually, because really I'm not really doing 10, and I'm not really meditating. And then we finally broke up, and I am so heartbroken. You know, I'm 44 years old, and my first time in my life, I'm absolutely heartbroken. Like I've never experienced any of that stuff growing up, you know, because I drank from the age of 14 to the age of 37, you know. So now I'm experiencing my very first heartbreak, and I'm so devastated. And so what I do is I pack up my stuff, and I go to St. Petersburg, Florida. And I get to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I get right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm taking over AA there. Like, where did this lunatic come from? 7 years sober, and I'm like starting meetings, starting conferences, you know, rearranging meetings, sponsoring all the homeless shelters. People, you know what I mean? They're not doing it right, I'm going to show them how to do it, you know. And I'm a complete lunatic. The only time I'm completely okay in my head is when I'm working one-on-one with a new person. So I start using people like a drink, you know. And I do know one thing, nothing will assure immunity against drinking. It tends to work with others when all else fails, because that's my experience, you know. And so I'm roaming around, you know, and I get a call from one of the girls I sponsor back in New York, and she said that my ex-boyfriend slipped in one of my 19-year-old grand sponsees. My heart is shattered. And I'm walking around, and I start thinking to myself, I need to regroup. What I do as an alcoholic is I regroup, and so I regroup, and my thing is what I need is a brand new AA boyfriend. That's what I need. This time I need like not an accountant like him. This time I need like a manly man. I need like a biker, like a powerful AA biker boyfriend, right? So a week before I moved there from this guy from Cleveland, Ohio, the Mecca of AA, moved there, and I hear him in the meetings, and he is powerful. And he calls me up one day, and he says to me, "Patty, do you want to go for a ride on my Harley?" I'm thinking, "You're damn right I do." I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I am God's favorite. He's answering my prayers, right?" And so I go and meet this guy, and I get on his bike, and we're riding over the bridges with my hair blowing in the wind with the moon and the palm trees. I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I'm definitely God's favorite." Right? And so we get down to the beach, right? And he says to me, "You want to get pizza?" Pizza, without a doubt, is my favorite food in the whole world. And I think, "Oh my God, it is definitely a sign from God." You know, and I know it, right? So we get into the pizza place, and he grabs my hands, and he's looking me lovingly in the eyes, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, he's like probably going to ask me to marry him, because now I want to get married," right? And this is what he says to me. He says, "Patty Burke, I've been watching the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you are so busy, you're absolutely dying." And he tore apart the third step. And he told me I had to stop playing God. Why? Because it doesn't work. And that I wasn't in charge of those kids, the ex-boyfriend. I wasn't in charge of anybody, that God was in charge. And how I was still making decisions based on self that are still putting me in the position to be harmed. And he started talking to me about 10. Was I doing 10? Absolutely not. How could I possibly do 10 when I was too busy making you do 10? You know what I mean? And I wasn't meditating. And this is what I know. I know that God loves us so much that he answers all our prayers. I really do feel like he loves me more, but anyway. And I think everybody should feel that way. And God did answer my prayers, and God didn't send him there to be my new AA boyfriend. God sent me to 12-step me, because I wouldn't have heard it from anybody but a biker. And he took me back through the steps, and really what I knew is what I wanted to do is get back to York, Pennsylvania, because that is where my heart belongs, and that's where I learned everything, and that's where my family is. And so finally I did a little tour of Jersey, started a meeting, did a little tour of Maine, got back to York, Pennsylvania, and when I got back to York, Pennsylvania, my oldest daughter, she's really in bad shape in Jersey. She's on drugs and she's drinking, and I have 2 granddaughters, and I know that they're not safe, and I'm a sober mother and I'm a sober grandmother, and I need to get my kids, need to get my daughter there, and I need to make sure my granddaughters are all right. And so finally I get her into York, Pennsylvania, and my daughter says to me one day, she says, "Mom, if you want me to take your car and go get milk, and I'll take the kids, this way you don't have to go out today." I'm thinking, wow, he's working for her today. And she takes my car at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I get a call from the state police that she was in jail, and she's totaled my car, and my granddaughters were in Hershey Medical, and they wouldn't tell me if they were dead or alive. And then I needed to get to Hershey Medical as soon as possible. And the one road to get to Hershey Medical is the road that she caused all these accidents on, and it's hours to get there. And I don't even know if my granddaughters are alive. And if they are alive, they've never, ever been away from anybody that they don't know. And finally, it's hours to get there. And I finally get there, and my granddaughters are alive, but they will not let me see my granddaughters because they think I allowed my daughter to drive drunk with them. And I finally convinced them that I did not do that she was sober when she left, and my oldest granddaughter was 4, and I could see and I could hear her. She was behind a sliding glass door, and she had her little hands over her little eyes, and she was saying over and over again, "I have no eyes, I have no eyes," because she was so scared, and she didn't know how to take her little self out of it. And so what they want me to do is they want me to become a foster mother. In the state of Pennsylvania, they go back 40 years into your past. And I have a past. I've stabbed one of those husbands right in the face. I tried to explain to the cops. They poked him really hard. They said they call that stabbing. I've had 5 DUIs. I had to jump through hoops. I had to be evaluated, fingerprinted, all kinds of stuff. And if I wasn't approved to be a foster mother, they were going to go live with a family that they didn't know. And finally, I got the call, and I was approved to be the foster mother. And they said, "We usually don't let people like you be foster parents. But since you were so open and so honest and so educational about alcoholism, we're going to allow you to be the foster mother." So I was a foster mother for 18 out of the 22 months. And I've had them for 5 years. And in and out of 5 years, my daughter would be in and out of our lives and stealing everything and bringing drug dealers and missing. I didn't know if she was dead or alive. And I couldn't eat, and I couldn't sleep, and I could barely work. And finally, I could call her PO. He wouldn't answer my calls. And so finally, I went in there. And I sat there for 3 hours, and they said, "You got to find my daughter because she is violated. She's out there using." And he did. He found her in 20 minutes and put her in jail for 10 months. And I slept and I ate those 10 months, and I didn't lose my job, and I knew my daughter was safe. And from there, she went to an 18-month Christian program, and the last year, my granddaughters went to go live with her. My daughter has 4 years sober today. She wound up marrying the pastor. And my whole life, right, all I wanted to do was be a mom. Right, and I got to be a full-time mom for my granddaughters, And but my two youngest daughters, they didn't want to come back and live with me. They said, Mom, you have a lot of people that love you in York, Pennsylvania, and our dad only has us, so we're going to stay here with our dad. So I get my daughters every summer and every other Christmas, and every summer they would come and they'd be in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous with me, and one summer their father's getting sober in Florida. And so when they left to go back to Florida, they said to their dad, can we go to a meeting with you? He's like, I guess you go to meetings all the time with your mom. So they go to this meeting with their father, and after the meeting was over, they say to him, they said, they're doing it wrong. That is not how they do it in York, Pennsylvania. What step are you on? And so he had a sponsor that wasn't taking him through the steps, and so they fired him and got him a sponsor who was going to take him through the 12 steps, because this is the deal. My daughters know that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous works because they have a mother, a sober mother who's not a fallen down drunken slut today. They have a mother that will suit up and show up for them. They have a mother who's a woman of grace and dignity. Summer after summer, when they would be in Pennsylvania, they would watch women come into our kitchen absolutely beat up and destroyed from alcoholism, and they would watch these women go through the steps and come alive. So if you do not believe Alcoholics Anonymous works, you can ask my kids, because my kids know that Alcoholics Anonymous works. My kids, not only do I have a brand new life, but my kids and my grandkids have a brand new life. In the third step, it says, if we keep close to God and perform His work, well, He will give us everything we need. I've had 5 DUIs. I have a license. I have a car registered and insured in one state, and I know I have a license and a car because of God. Because I try to keep close to God and perform His work, and try to pass this on and try to help as many brothers and as many as my brothers and sisters as I can. Because that was done for me. People have laid down their life for me, And I don't have a lot of outside stuff, but what I have on the inside, nobody else can take from me. And I can lay down my head at night and I can go to sleep and I can look anybody in the eye, And another thing that's really pretty freaking cool, that I have not lost a pair of underwear in the last 16 years since I got sober. And I hope the God in me has touched the God in you tonight. Thanks for allowing me to share my experience.
All right, thank you, Patty, for that incredibly powerful message. That was awesome. Thank you very much. A couple of quick announcements here before we get out of here. If you want to get informed about this group, we have a website, we have a Facebook page. Our food and fellowship starts at 8 o'clock, so get here early, get something to eat, get involved. Stay for the meeting, after the meeting. If you're new, if you want to get involved, if you want to do some service work tonight, we could always use help with the chairs. We do both sides, 5 chairs across, 7 rows back. Let's get one more round of applause again for Patty. It's customary, we always line up, we form a line to thank our speakers. They come here on their own expense and time, so if you want to do that. Next week we have Joanna M. coming in from LA, and if you care to join us, we have a nice way of closing.